Chapter 7 Lonely Month Su Qing's autobiographical novel 10 Years of Marriage original work Chapter 7 Lonely Month. Cheka would cry. When she cried, I was very anxious. Aunt Huang said, "Young madam, don't worry. When you have milk tomorrow, things will be easier." But there was still no milk the next day. I was afraid that Cheka would really be starving. I wanted to tell them, but I was embarrassed. Xian also walked in a few times and asked me if I was okay at the moment. I nodded, and he didn't dare to say much, fearing that I would be exhausted after giving birth. As for Cheku, she also secretly looked at me, and when she saw me looking at her, she looked away embarrassedly. In the evening, Aunt Huang walked in and said that it was time for the child to open his mouth. Mother-in-law stood outside the door, giving orders, but refused to come into the room again, saying that the red room could not be entered, and it would be a sin in the next life. Aunt Huang brought a bowl of soup cooked by a wood comb and asked me to wash my nipples, saying that a wooden comb can comb hair, so its field can also unblock milk. After washing the nipples, I let the child suck. It's really strange that she knows how to suck, and sucks so tightly and so skillfully. I felt that I really didn't have any milk, but the child made a swallowing sound. Could it be that she was swallowing her own saliva? The nipples that have never been fed are called raw nipples, and they are really painful to suck. And she seemed to suck harder and harder. Later, I really felt pain in my heart, so I quickly pulled it out and saw that there was blood on it. Aunt Huang said, "Change another nipple for her to feed. After a few times, it won't hurt." I touched my other nipple, hesitating to put it in her little mouth, but seeing her sucking her lower lip in vain, making a sound, I couldn't bear it anymore, and finally gritted my teeth and hugged her close to me. When sucking the second milk, the child seemed a little tired, not as strong as before, and soon fell asleep. I gently slept beside her. After a nap, I felt my breasts were hard. It turned out that both breasts were full of milk. When the milk was full, I really hoped that the child could suck it out more, but the child was sleepy. I had no choice but to gently pinch my nipples. I felt a little itchy, and soon the milk spurted out, thin and filamentous, like a pool of water. After some spurting out, I felt better, but soon the swelling and pain came again. I told Aunt Huang, and Aunt Huang said, "More milk is always a good thing. The baby is blessed." But soon my mother-in-law came outside and told me, "I think it is better for Aunt Huang to wring a cold towel to cover your breasts. Your father-in-law has told you not to breastfeed yourself. You can have a boy early next year." I have sent people to look for a wet nurse in the countryside. I had nothing to say. I thought, why don't I let the child have so much milk? Although it hurts my breasts, I like to see her leaning against me under my armpits. When she sleeps beside me, I feel fulfilled and happy. But on the third day, a wet nurse finally came. She was short and swollen, with a flat face and a slightly collapsed nose, but she looked kind. She took my Cheku and lived with her in the back room. During the day, Cheku slept in the bed, and she drove away mosquitoes for her and took care of her diapers. She also went to bed at night. When I thought of my Cheku sleeping next to a flat-nosed woman tonight, and when she was hungry, she would go to her sack to suck on her nipples that looked like black dates. I really cried out of grievance. I felt that I could no longer sleep. Without her, I felt so empty in bed and so lonely in my heart. In the middle of the night, my breasts became even more swollen and painful. I had no choice but to call the nurse loudly, "Bring the child here, let her suck some milk. My breasts are really painful." But the nurse didn't respond at first, and then she said vaguely, "The child has enough to eat. Young lady, don't worry, you will catch a cold if you carry the child around." I slammed the bed and said angrily, "I asked you to bring it here, and you dared to refuse. Do I still need you to decide for my child?" At this time, Aunt Huang could no longer keep silent, and stuck her head out of the tent to persuade, "Young lady, please be patient. The pain in your nipples will go away after a while, and it will come back to you if it's gone. The master and the mistress are eager for you to raise a little grandson for them soon." I snorted, thinking to myself that I would never raise a child again. It was so painful to raise a child, and it would be so embarrassing to raise a girl. Marriage is really meaningless when it comes to the hearts of two people. They're still far apart. When it comes to the happiness between men and women, it is over in an instant. It only takes 10 minutes, but it is exchanged for 10 months of pregnancy and 10 years of hard work in raising. From then on, I rarely saw Chaku. They said that you should not hold the baby too much during the first month, and if you hold her too much, she will be in trouble in the future. I also remembered that there is such a saying in the common sense of childcare, that if a baby is held too much, his back will be bent. It is not a good thing, so I just let them do it. Sometimes I clearly heard her crying in the back room, which was very pleasant to hear, but I couldn't hear it twice. As if the big nipple of the wet nurse blocked her mouth with her nose, and it became a muffled humming sound. I missed my Chaku very much. My breasts hurt so much, and a large ball of bread-like thing gradually turned into a fruit cake, with hard pulling and faster. Finally, after about a week, my breasts no longer secreted milk, and I knew that from then on I would not be able to take my Chaku back from the hands of that flat-nosed woman, at least within a year, or perhaps more than a year. I slept alone in bed quietly, and the time seemed particularly long. Xian sometimes came in quietly to look at me, but he didn't say much. Once he stammered to me that he would go to Shanghai in 3 days, and the school had already started. I nodded without answering, thinking that Ruixian should be happy again. She was happy, and I was suffering. Can I go back to school? I didn't finish the last semester, and the next semester started again. Keeman didn't write to me after graduation. He was not at C University, and Nanjing had nothing for me to miss. I'd better stay at home to see Kyuka. She will always be mine, and seeing her will comfort me. After Xian left, I felt even more lonely. Except for Aunt Huang and the flat-nosed wet nurse, no one would come into the delivery room, as if it was full of sinful mud, and if I stepped on it, I would get stained with their bodies. Then why did so many people come in to see me when I was about to give birth? They had whispered and criticized my lower body from belly to heels, as if they paid much attention to this part. They probably had always appreciated and studied their own bodies and compared mine with theirs. I think they were probably looking at the shape of my belly to see whether it would be a boy or a girl. They were probably also calculating my birth canal to see whether it would be convenient for the baby to come out. I think they were subconsciously hoping that my belly shape was not good, so that the baby would definitely be a girl. And the birth canal did not seem to be wide enough, and I would be in great pain if the baby could not come out. Unfortunately, my experience was exactly as they expected, and they felt ashamed again, as if they were afraid that if I died due to childbirth difficulties, they would know their bad intentions in front of the Bodhisattva and take revenge on them. So they immediately looked compassionate, hoping that I could give birth smoothly. Of course, to smoothly was not good, until the Western doctor cut it with scissors. Then they were happy and relieved. They had already left my room with great satisfaction. After that, it seemed like it was just an ordinary play, nothing exciting. They no longer cared to watch it, so they all insulted me, saying that I lived in the red room and it was a sin to enter it, and they deliberately ignored me. I was so miserable in there, waking up early in the morning and watching the dawn. At dawn, Aunt Huang got out of bed in the back room, urinated, coughed twice, and then tiptoed through my room. I suddenly called her, "Aunt Huang, are you up so early?" She was startled, calmed down and replied, "Young madam, you should sleep for a while. I will come to wash your face after I heat up the water." But Aunt Huang did not come for a long time. Maybe she was busy cleaning the courtyard, wiping the table, and moving the chairs, and then went to boil water. Maybe she boiled half a pot of water to wash her face first, and then heated up another pot to wash mine. She was still busy eating breakfast, filling her own empty stomach, and then thinking about my breakfast. As for the wet nurse, she would not get up until the sun was 3 feet high, holding a bunch of milk, and didn't care about anything. I lay alone in bed, feeling irritable, and just wanted to get up. However, my lower body seemed to be out of control, half numb, straight and hard, and no longer had any strength. My mother-in-law once told me, "Don't get sick during the delivery month. If you get sick, you can't cure it in your lifetime. It's better not to move. The lonely time, dozens of days will always pass." After breakfast, the wet nurse came to stand in front of my bed for a while. She told me how the baby woke up again and again at night, how she patted her carefully and quickly fed her milk, and she fell asleep while sucking milk. She also said that her milk was really swollen, and the baby couldn't finish it. So she had to squeeze it out with a bowl, thinking that she could give you less milk to drink. I said, who wants to drink your milk? Human milk is fishy and light, and has no taste. She went into the back room awkwardly. It's not that I didn't know her good intentions. I just hated her for occupying my child and bragging to me. After my grandmother passed away, I felt bored again. Reading books and newspapers was not allowed, and no one would turn on the phonograph. I looked out the window with my eyes open, but all I could see was a piece of sky as big as dried tofu. Sometimes there were clouds in the sky, and sometimes there were no clouds. When it came to the sun, you could only see its light, but not the sun itself. When the sun shone through, the glass in the room was shining. I was afraid of damaging my eyes, so I quickly moved to a dark place. The heavy mahogany utensils that were carved complicatedly all stood upright with stiff faces, without any fresh and lively atmosphere. I was tired of looking at them, and wondered when I could fly out of this old and quiet room to see them. Autumn is coming. Although it is bleak outside, there must be some high and clear air. It must be better than here anyway. I want to fly through the windows that divide the sky, float above the thin white clouds, and then ride them to my old house, visit my mother, and cry with her. Why do I want to go out through the window? The reason is that I don't like to go out of the door and walk down the stairs. Maybe I will bump into the yellow-haired girl at the top of the stairs. Seeing her crooked smile, I don't like Xingying. No, I even hate her. The urge is that my body can't move. I can only lie in bed and wait for lunch to be served. Women who are giving birth eat well, with eggs, meat and everything, but no vegetables. Aunt Huang said, eating vegetables will make you swollen. I said, what is swollen? Is it a swollen stomach or a swollen throat that can't swallow? But she couldn't answer. I wanted to eat, but she still didn't allow it. After lunch, I took a nap, but the crying of Cheku in the back room woke me up again. I was worried. Where did the nanny go? Just when I was about to clap and call, her voice buzzed from the back room. It turned out that she was also asleep, but she made Cheku cry. I said, Grandma, you are so ignorant. I just took a nap and slept well, but you let the child wake me up. She responded with a few hums in the next room, and hummed were sang in a low and hoarse voice. Baby, go to sleep quickly. Call, baby, go to sleep. I couldn't sleep after being woken up by them. Listening to the back room, there was no sound, and I knew that the nanny had fallen asleep with the child again, and I was very annoyed. After a while, I shouted, Nanny, is the baby asleep? Did the nipple spit out? The baby sleeps with the nipple in his mouth. The nanny woke up with a hum, and kept calling out that she knew. I was just about to get up to wash the diaper. I snorted and said to her, you really have slept enough. You woke up much later than me in the morning. Now I am asleep and don't take care of the child. But she wakes me up. The nanny didn't say anything and continued to hum. There was no one to talk to, no one to scold, and there was no point in talking. So I changed the topic and asked the nurse, why did you come out? Nurse, she sighed in the back room and said, it's my fate. Young lady, I married a man who was not ambitious, greedy and lazy, and only knew how to give birth to children at home. And then I threw the children into the hall one by one. What? I asked with a surprised tone. I knew it in my heart, but I was afraid that I guessed wrong. So I asked again, but it was thrown into the orphanage. She sobbed and said, it's not a big white and fat baby, a boy, so I had to be cruel and throw it away. It's easy to make money if you throw away a child. I comforted her in a calm tone, feeling a little proud. My baby is a girl, and I can hire a wet nurse, but her boy was thrown into the hall. So I knew that the inequality between the rich and the poor was more serious than the inequality between men and women. I only heard the poor woman say again, young lady, there is really no benefit in getting married. You raise a child with great difficulty, but then you lose it and have to become a wet nurse for others. Although your young lady and the master and his wife treat me well here, and I earn so much money. What else can I say? But the money cannot be used by me. My unsuccessful husband has already taken 10 yuan from here, saying that he is going to pay off his debts. When I gave birth this time, although the midwife did not shout, I delivered the baby myself, but I couldn't bear to take the baby to the city and throw it to the orphanage, so I asked someone to take it for me. which would cost several yuan. I nodded silently, feeling a little sad, and didn't want to listen anymore. After a while, I said to her, "Is the baby still asleep? Bring her over to let me see." She was obviously a little surprised, but she didn't dare to object, so she wrapped the child in a towel and brought it to me next to me. Chaka fell asleep close to me. Her little body moved a few times, her mouth sucked empty, as if she was dreaming of sucking milk. I wanted to put the nipple into her little mouth, even though there was no milk. It would always feel itchy and comfortable to let her suck a few times. But Grandma said, "Young Grandma, push the baby away. Your milk has been cut off, and it will be poisonous if you suck it out again." Although I didn't believe it, I didn't want to disturb the child's sleep, so I lay straight and didn't touch her anymore. I said, "Nanny, you go wash the diapers. I'll take care of the child." She hummed, and her short and fat body moved, dull and slow. The holes in her flat nose were lifted up and down, and there was obviously some sadness on her flat face. It's really a man who is not up to the task. If I could marry someone who is satisfactory, as if she was saying. As if she was afraid to say it all, she laughed. I lay on the bed, looking at the sky outside the window. A fantasy floated in my heart. On such a bleak autumn evening, the Hu Lake should be filled with broken lotus stems. Now that my lover has not returned, I wonder if the lake in the mountains will feel lonely.
Alright, this part of the story ends here.
Want to know what happened next? Let's listen to the breakdown next time.